If you do this just 2 times a week, you can completely stop and even reverse insulin resistance. And you're not gonna have to do any type of calorie restriction or long bouts of fasting or any extra exercise. Now you may be wondering, like, why is it even important to reverse insulin resistance? Well, if you can do that and become what's called insulin sensitive, you are gonna burn more fat, you're gonna lose a lot more weight, and you're overall just gonna feel better. Now, before we begin, for those of you who don't know who I am, you may be new to my channel, my name is Tim Ernst. I'm an intermittent keto fasting coach who has personally lost myself 70 pounds in 7 months using the combination of the keto diet, intermittent fasting, and strength training. I've also coached high-performing men over 40 to lose at least 40 pounds in 16 weeks using my Keto Shed 40 coaching program. If you want more information on that, I'll go ahead and put a link in the description of this video. When you click that link, it's going to send you to another video, and it's going to kind of explain more in detail as to how I could potentially help you. So to start off this video, like I said, you only have to do this twice a week. There's just a couple things that I want to talk about before we actually get to the tactics as to what you can do to reverse insulin resistance. The first thing is you may have heard this term, like, try to get a balanced diet, protein, carbs, and fats. Well, the problem today is that people are hammering their bodies all throughout the day, and this is called mixed fuel overload. Now, what I mean by mixed fuel, this is what I mean by eating a balanced diet of protein, carbs, and fats. You got to remember, hundreds of years ago, they didn't have the access to food like we have today. We have a lot of processed junk. We're eating a lot of, carbohydrates and unhealthy fats. And when you have all that combined and we're grazing throughout the day, this is what causes insulin resistance. Now, before we actually talk about insulin resistance, we first need to talk about mitochondrial function. Now, how do you know that you have mitochondrial dysfunction? You may have heard this term mitochondria. Well, I'm going to explain it in the simplest terms. If you notice that you're tired all the time, you have fatigue, you have trouble focusing, there may be somewhat of an issue with your mitochondria cells. And having optimal mitochondria is essential for you to have an overall well-being of just being, feeling good. You're able to lose weight, you're able to build muscle. This is key for health, all right? So what is this whole mitochondria? All right, I want you to just imagine that your body is a city. Now, within that city, you have buildings. Those buildings represent the different parts of your body, like your mind, your heart, your muscle, all of those kind of things. Now, in order to provide energy or electricity to the buildings in that city, you have to have what's called power plants. This is where mitochondria comes in. So when you have these power plants that give the electricity in the cities to turn your air conditioner on, your computers, turn the lights on, you got to have power plants. Well, in order for you to have proper energy and not deal with the fatigue, you need to optimize your mitochondria, because those are the power plants for your body to give you energy. Does that kind of make sense? Now, in order to have proper mitochondrial function, we need to have what's called insulin sensitive, okay? You don't want to have insulin resistance, you want to be insulin sensitive. So what exactly is insulin? All insulin is, I want you to just imagine that insulin is like a key and the mitochondria is like a door. So when you ingest foods, mainly sugars and from carbohydrates and fats, that's what gives you fuel. Essentially, your body runs off of 2 types of fuel. You may have heard me talk on this channel about the keto diet a lot. When you do the keto diet, your body's going to get fuel from ketones. Now, if you don't do a keto diet and you're eating a well-balanced diet like protein, carbs, and fats, your main fuel source is going to come from the carbohydrates. What happens is when you ingest carbs, your body breaks it down into glucose. But that's not where the problem is. It's not that your body doesn't break down the glucose, it's where does the glucose go? That's where it becomes a problem. This is where insulin comes in. So when you ingest carbs and sugars, insulin kind of comes up, rises in the body, your blood sugars, and insulin's job basically is the key that opens the door to the mitochondria. And what it's going to do is going to shuttle all that glucose into the mitochondria cells, and then the door shuts. Well, When you're insulin resistant, what happens is your insulin is a dull key. You put that key in the lock and the door quite doesn't open. Now what happens is when that door don't open, you have all this sugars floating around in your bloodstream, and this is what causes a lot of metabolic disease like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, you name it. Insulin is usually the root cause for a lot of metabolic disease. So how can we fix this? Okay, what we're gonna do just twice a week, we're gonna do something that's called micro fasting. Now this is somewhat related to the video I did a couple days ago where I talk about ETRF, and this is where you're basically eating at the wrong times. Most people are not eating correctly. They're skipping breakfast, maybe they'll have a lunch and they're just pounding the calories at night. Well, in that last video I talked about, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to consume the majority of your calories at the end of the day after work when most people are sitting on the couch watching TV. It makes more sense to get the majority of your calories in the morning and keep those calories very, very light at night. It's like the whole saying, right? Eat like a king for breakfast, a prince for lunch, and a pauper for dinner. Well, this holds very, very true. So here's exactly what micro fasting is. It's similar to ETRF. So what you're going to do is you're going to wake up in the morning, wait about 30 minutes to an hour and try to eat a big breakfast. This is when your body needs to fuel as you're going to work or going to work out, whatever activity you're doing. You want to get the majority of your calories in the morning. With microfasting, what you're going to do, you eat that breakfast like I just said, and then you're going to fast for 6 to 8 hours. So basically no eating in the middle of the day, from like late morning all the way to like maybe early dinner. So let me give an example. Let's say you have your breakfast at like 8 in the morning. Go fast all day until about 4 p.m. and have a light dinner. All right. So that's all you're going to do. Breakfast in the morning, fast all day, no eating, and try to have like a very light dinner. Now, if you really want to optimize your insulin, try to exercise during that fasting window right in the middle of the day. That's actually going to help you even more. And if you just do this twice a week, it's actually been shown to help people start to manage their insulin resistance, and you want to become what's called insulin sensitive. Because if you remember what I said at the beginning of this video, you want to be able to use insulin effectively. You want to be able to open that door to the mitochondria. You want to shuttle all those sugars and glucose to that mitochondria because that's what's going to give you energy. In fact, you want to know how your insulin resistance, that may be one question you might be thinking. I already talked about mitochondria, like how do you know you have poor mitochondrial dysfunction, as if you're tired, you're lethargic. Well, how do you know you're insulin resistant? Well, very, very, very simple test. You don't even have to go to the doctor for this. All you're going to do is you're going to take a step back. All right, you ready for this? And you're going to look down. If you have excess belly fat, you're insulin resistant. Do you know what belly fat actually is? It's like what we talked about earlier. All it is stored energy. Remember, mitochondria is the power plant that sends energy to that city, right? To all the different parts of your body. Well, the problem is most people today are consuming too much energy because food is energy. So when you consume too much energy, you're going to see it manifest and sit right on your waistline. So kind of look at your belly fat as like meals that are tied around your waistline, ready to be used for energy. But because you keep eating all day long and grazing, you're not allowing your body to surrender its own body fat. A lot of people who have excess body fat, they can actually go a day or two without food because they have all this stored energy. All right, does that make sense? In fact, before we end today's video, I want you to comment below. I'm going to give you a list of where you should be, or this is a list of what the average person weighs today. So I did a poll on my Instagram and my Facebook saying that the CDC just came out that the average person who is 20 years old and over, the average weight I think was like 199. And then there's different age brackets, like from 30 to 39, from 40 to 49. And there's both a list for men and then there's a list for women. I'm kind of curious to see where you rank. So go ahead and put it in the comments. Where do you rank as to what the average weight is based on your age? I was pretty shocked. So for me, I think the average weight for me, because I'm in between that 40 and 49. I'm 49 years old. I'll be 50 in 5 months next year in 2026. So for me, the average weight for someone who's between 40 and 49, I want to say it's in that like 206, 208 range. Well, I just weighed myself this morning and I'm 185. So I'm well below the average. So that's kind of where you want to be. You want to be below the average. And in order to get below the average of what you're seeing today, you got to do those two things. You got to do what's called micro fasting. This is going to help you with your insulin resistance. And by doing that, you're going to be able to shuttle sugars and carbs into a healthy mitochondria. So it's those two things. Reverse insulin resistance so you can have proper mitochondrial function. I hope that makes sense. And if it did, and if you really enjoyed this video, make sure to like the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and always hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. Until next time, I'll see you then.